Hello and welcome to the Flying Gato YouTube channel. My name is Elias, and in today's video we're doing the second episode of Drive Talks. In case you guys missed the previous one, Drive Talks is where we get in my car, usually my Civic Type R. We take a little drive and talk about semi-controversial topics. So if you like this kind of videos, join in, hit the like button, subscribe, let's get started. I don't know if you guys heard that, but there's a squadron of A-10 Warthogs. Those are the heavy machine gun carrying awesome aircraft that I live kind of nearby here, about an hour away from one of their air bases, and the sound is deafening when they're flying over. So I think you guys heard a little bit of that. But yeah, the controversial topic we're covering today is why electric cars are a scam. I'm going to give you 5 reasons why they are a scam. Now, of course, if you have a certain usage case, I obviously think that they're smart for certain people to get. For example, when I install solar panels here in northern Florida, we get lots of sunlight. So when I install my solar panels, I am going to use that solar panel and probably buy some kind of electric car just to basically get free energy put into my electric car and make my solar panels that much more useful. But for most Americans, they are a scam. There's 5 reasons why. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, before you start questioning my motives, I am a very, very conscious conservationist. I love my green spaces. I love my clean air, my clean water. I'm very avid about all of these things. For example, I spent my own money, time, and efforts to plant and maintain a longleaf pine field, right? So I have about 35 acres of planted longleaf pine on my property that I had to pay for myself. And I had to keep it mowed and maintained while they grow. For those of you that are curious what a longleaf pine looks like when it's planted, this is it in its grass form. This eventually becomes the lumber that you use and buy from Lowe's, Home Depot, those light poles and light posts that you see, especially out here in the East. It's these. So you have to basically wait 20 to 30 years before you harvest them to become wood or light post. There's another big one over there. That's a nice looking one right there. So they're about to start growing rapidly. I planted them a couple years ago, and this is what they look like. So reason number one why they're a scam is I don't own one. Most of you guys don't own one in the United States. However, we're still paying for them by a significant amount. If you bought a new car in the last 5 years, chances are the car company that you bought your new car from has been paying companies like Tesla for carbon offset credits. In case you guys don't know what that is, quick overview. Due to CAFE standards and other regulatory compliance issues, effectively the government forces companies to buy EV credits effectively, and that subsidizes companies like Tesla. Tesla's made a lot of their cash from other car companies paying them for carbon offset credits. That's crazy to me. But that's not even the worst part. No, the worst part by far is the fact that the US federal government is subsidizing the development of these companies. Even all the way back in the Obama administration, the federal government invested billions of US tax dollars into a battery manufacturing plant that just went bankrupt. This is back like over 10 years ago. I can't remember the name. It's not Solana, it's something else. But they took billions of taxpayer dollars and we got nothing for it. Nothing at all. It's insane to me that much money can just be poof, gone, and nobody went to jail. Nobody really got into as much trouble as they should for basically stealing $2 billion. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. We pay out the nose on taxes, and they shouldn't be going to technologies that are not really helping anybody. But when the federal government just effectively starts betting on these new technologies and then starts pushing it on people like us, consumers, it's just not working out. And that's reason number 1 why I believe it's a scam. Reason number 2 why they are such a big scam in my opinion. Let me know in the comments if you disagree. But the fact that car manufacturers are forced to pay out the nose for these mandates, we're calling them EV mandates, electric vehicle mandates, all that costs that the manufacturers have to spend for fines or for compliance, etc., that goes right back to the consumers every single time. It has to. There's no other way. Companies are for-profit making machines. They can't absorb the cost without passing it on to us. It just doesn't work that way. So what am I talking about? There's two things. So I mentioned CAFE standards. If you don't know what that stands for, it's corporate average fuel economy. If your average fuel economy of every single car you sold doesn't meet a certain standard, you have to pay a hefty fine to the federal government. You can offset those costs or fines by buying credits or EV credits from companies like Tesla. So for years, a company like Stellantis, for example, if you don't know what Stellantis is, Stellantis owns Dodge and Chrysler, amongst other brands, but they have had to pay through the nose for every single Hellcat that was sold. That's insane to me, that a car company has to pay their competitor, Tesla, because that's what they are a competitor, in order to offset fines that would be given by the federal government. So the federal government is forcing something that's not naturally there, and that wouldn't be naturally be happening in a free market. That's awful to me. And so I think it's a huge issue when corporations are forced to do something that they may not be ready for, that they may not be comfortable with, or whatever the case may be. So that's just the CAFE standards and the CAFE standard rules. The other thing that has been happening is that companies, Honda, Toyota, GM, have been forced, because they think they have no choice, to invest billions and billions of dollars into these EV cars that nobody really wants right now. And we'll get to that in a second. But all these billions of dollars of costs is at the cost of other things. Like, for example, they could be putting those development dollars into making a more fuel-efficient engine, into making better hybrids. But instead, they've been spending it on making sure their EVs are developed. And, you know, some people would say that without forcing companies to do so, we would never have battery technology that's good enough to compete. I understand that, but if people wanted battery cars, if the markets wanted battery operated vehicles, EVs, they would be buying the ones that currently exist. And a lot of them have been bought. Tesla has had great years over the years, but those are all early adopters. It shouldn't be forced on car companies to make a certain type of product just to meet some certain regulation. I mean, this has been happening for the last 50 or 60 years. Car companies get forced to do stuff, they don't agree with it, it's expensive, that cost always ends up trickling down to the consumer. We end up paying for it at the end of the day. Reason number 3, and this is a big one. A lot of people are buying EVs or buying into the EV, discussion and like, oh, EVs are great. You never have to pay for gas again. I implore you, do the math, because I've done the math. And outside of what I said in the beginning, and let's talk about the exceptions here. So exception number 1 is if you live in a suburban area, you have a garage, you have inexpensive electricity prices, right? So you can take your electric car, you park it in a garage, you plug it in, and you're paying 14 to 15 cents per kilowatt hours or less. So where I live in my area, electricity is fairly inexpensive. It's like 11 or 12, or actually, last time I checked, it was like 10 or 11 cents per kilowatt hour. That's excellent. So you would be saving money that way. And if you have a use case for it, right? So the exception number 2 is if you have a use case for it, like if you live again in a suburban area or an urban area with, you're never going to travel more than 30 or 40 or 50 miles or even 100 miles per day, right? Your road trips are less than 100 miles. It might make sense to get an EV, but I would get it used, right? And we'll talk about that in a second. Outside of that, if you take your EV and you go on a road trip, or you go, you have to fill it up on a way to work or whatever the case may be. I mean, first of all, if you're on your way to work and you forget to charge your electric car, you're absolutely screwed. Absolutely screwed, because you're going to have to wait at least half an hour to an hour if you find a charger, right? If you don't have a Tesla, good luck. And you're going to have to pay a lot. It's going to be about the same, if not more, than filling up a gas tank like my Civic Type R. So it costs about 20 to 30 bucks to fill up this tank. It's only a 10-gallon tank. It costs about 40 or 50 bucks to recharge a battery at a charging station, a public charging station. And it gives you about the same amount of range, which is crazy to me, right? So here you are, you're getting an electric car, you're hoping to save money, and you get fleeced whenever you charge it outside. Now, of course, back to the exception number 3 is if you have solar panels. If you have solar panels and you're trying to use that energy towards something else, like, you know, you have a lot of solar panels and you have excess amounts of energy, and for whatever reason your power company is not paying you that much for the energy you're putting back in the grid, or they don't allow you to do that, I think it makes a lot of sense. Actually, I am thinking about, when I get my solar panels, I am thinking about possibly getting some kind of plug-in hybrid or a plug-in electric vehicle, just to use my excess sunlight, because here in Florida we get lots of sunlight, lots of sunshine. Why not use that to drive around in? That makes a little bit of sense, but I am getting it used, and let's talk about that right now. Resale value on these used electric vehicles are insanely terrible for many reasons, right? So I went and looked this up, right? So what is a used, so what did a Model 3 cost in 2019? I just wanted to take a look at a Model 3, and it cost about 50 grand after the subsidies. In case you missed it, the US government subsidizes a purchase of an electric vehicle, and some states given a further subsidy. A lot of those are going away, but they gave a ton. You could probably saved about 10 to 15 grand off of an EV purchase when you would buy it. But even with that, it still cost 50 grand in 2019. Try to buy a used one today, it's $20,000 with like 30 or 40,000 miles. 20 grand, so from 50 grand to 20 grand. You lose 30 grand in 5 years. I don't know about you, but that's a significant amount of depreciation, and I would not like to lose that amount of money just because I'm driving an EV. The reason this happens is because battery technology is at its infancy. We're not quite there yet, and at the end of the video I'll tell you guys, you know, I think the future is EV. I think that the EVs will take over gas-powered engines, but I think we're pretty far away from that. We're at least 20 years away from that, maybe 30. And so when you look at battery technology from 5 years ago, it's a lot worse than battery technology from today, and the same is going to be in 5 years, and it's going to be the same, and you know, in 10 years from now, no one's going to want these paperweights that are being sold today. Guaranteed paperweights, right? Batteries are garbage or trash. You have to refurbish them. They're expensive to deal with. They're complicated to deal with. That's the other thing. People say, oh yeah, the maintenance is going to be nothing because, internal combustion engines are a lot of moving parts, a lot of maintenance. You got to change the oil a lot, etc. It's effectively the same in an electric car. There's a lot of problems. I believe Edmunds or Car and Driver, Carlos Lago on YouTube. I forget which channel he does. He may do both, but they did a long-term test of a Model 3, and within the warranty period, thank God, they had to replace one of the electric motors because it failed. These things fail. These are still moving parts. And the worst and most complicated part of an EV is obviously going to be the battery bank. It's a chemical, mechanical process. It's got coolers, it's got fans on it, it's got literally chemistry happening every time you charge it and discharge it. It's got voltage controllers, it's a lot of complex electrical, mechanical systems. And do I think they're cool? Absolutely. I think EVs are super cool. And they're super fast, and they're awesome for certain subset of folks, but for someone like me, I live in the middle of nowhere, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for most of America. And so when you try to sell and recoup your purchase, it ends up not working out in the long term. And so that's reason number 3, right? People think they're going to save money. You're really not. And even, let's say, even if you're never going to resell your brand new Tesla, you're going to have to replace the battery. in the first 10 years of its life. In every 10 years or so, you'll have to replace the battery, and that's a very expensive endeavor. Like I already said, very complex systems, very, very, very insane to replace. I don't recommend it, and so that's reason number 3. Reason number 4, the range is always a lie. Battery electric range is always a lie. And I'll tell you this why. I'll tell you why. For example, this morning in northern Florida, it was 32 degrees. If I had an electric vehicle with a range of about 200 miles, let's say, and I charged up my electric vehicle, that range would probably go down to like 170, 160, just because it's cold. It gets colder than that, good luck charging your batteries. This happened last year in Chicago, where electric cars basically just had to stay parked, and they had to get picked up by their loved ones. Thank God, if you have any. If not, you're just stuck in a cold, dark place trying to charge your electric vehicle by yourself. That's not a pretty sight. And if it gets too cold, it just won't work, or it won't give you that much mileage. If it gets too hot, your range gets reduced significantly. Got a lot of passengers, a lot of weight in the car, not going to work. It's going to reduce your range significantly. Do you have a small trailer you want to tow? Forget it. You're going to get 100 miles. Let's say you buy one of those Ford EVs or Chevy EVs. It's not going to work. It's really not going to be that good for you. So the range is always a lie. And yes, battery technology is always improving. But even if you're driving in ideal standards, even if you're going about it exactly the way the manufacturer, like Tesla, designs the vehicle, it's gonna be a problem if you're taking a road trip. So I take road trips a lot. I go to Orlando, I go to Tampa, I go to North Carolina, I sometimes go to New York, a few times a year. I drive. I prefer driving sometimes if I'm carrying a lot of people. So when I drive, I usually have to fill up 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 times. And every time I fill up, it's about 5 to 10 minutes. And it's not a big deal. If I had an electric car, to fill up, first I'd have to make sure I find an available charger. There's not enough in the US, and that will be fixed, I think, in the future. But for now, big problem. And then I get there and I have to wait half an hour to an hour for it to get 200 miles of range, right? And then again, if it was too hot or it's too cold, that range goes down significantly and you have a problem. And so for road trips, it doesn't make any sense. Yes, I know you can road trip with a Tesla supercharger, and you could argue that every couple hours or 3 hours or so, you should be taking a half-hour break. But that's not me. That's not most Americans that I know. People take road trips. They want to go and get where they're going. Road tripping in an EV doesn't make any sense. And then I kind of already talked about this, but let's say you wake up and you forgot to plug in your EV. It's not charged. It didn't charge overnight, and you have to take a work trip, and you had enough range, but now you don't have enough range, so you have to plug in your car again. And by the way, you don't have a fast charger at home. You have a normal charger that charges overnight. So now you're stuck. If that's your only vehicle, you don't have the range to make it there. There's no EV chargers there, or if there are, you have to charge before you get there, let's say. You're screwed. You're going to have to call your client or your boss or whoever it is that's meeting you for work that, hey, I'm going to be a couple hours late. My EV needs a charge. Today, oh shoot, my gas tank's empty. Let me stop over my local gas station for 5 minutes, fill it up, and go on my merry way. So the last reason we're going to talk about is reason number 5, in case you're counting, is the fact that they're always saying that it's such a reliable thing, it's never going to break, no moving parts, just replace tires and brake pads every once in a while, and that's about it, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that that's wrong. Electric vehicles do not mean that they're never going to break. Sure, the electric motor is very simple, but electric motors break a lot. Hey, these things happen. It's a manufacturing defect. It's not a big deal. But the fact that people say, oh, it's never going to break, it's never going to require maintenance, they're really wrong. Sure, changing your oil, and every 5,000 miles or so you change your oil. Every 10 or 15 or 20,000 miles or so you get new tires, depending on what tires you have. Yeah, all these things happen to gas cars, but electric cars go through tires way faster than normal cars do. It's the weight. So you're going to be paying more on tires. If you are in stop and go traffic a lot, there's a lot of regenerative braking that happens, so you don't use a brake pad, but your brake pads are going to have to be replaced a lot as well. Weight is the enemy of those things, right? These EVs, they weigh 4, 5, 6, 7,000 pounds. That's a lot of weight to be managing. It's funny because I'm actually sitting here in this parking lot in front of an EV parking center. So there's the Cadillacs over there. There's a Cadillac, there's a Hyundai and a Ford. And then there's the Teslas are over here. So that's very interesting. And all of those vehicles, they're gonna need maintenance. They're gonna require a ton of maintenance to keep on the road. And the thing that is not talked about is obviously 5, 6, 7 years down the line, when your battery is a little bit older, let's say you're using your vehicle, you're having some spirited runs because they're very fast. So you pin that accelerator pedal to the metal and it goes really fast, and then one of your circuit boards overheats or one of the batteries on the inside overheats and it breaks down and you have decreased capacity because of it. You're gonna be paying out the nose for a replacement. It's gonna be $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 or more to replace your battery pack. Now it could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less, depending on if you get a used one, if you get a refurbished one, or if you just take yours and you want to refurbish it. But folks, mechanics don't really know how to work on EVs. Most of them don't want to learn quite yet. And in 5 to 10 years, I'm sure battery technology is going to come out where there's a lot less risk of burning your entire office or house down if your EV battery goes down. Because God forbid you have a fire with your current EV, that's just going to burn. It's going to burn a hole in the ground. A lot of racetracks that I go on, I do a lot of track driving, don't even allow EVs anymore. Because if there's any issues that happen with the batteries, especially if you get into a car accident or an accident on the track and there's a fire, there's really no way to put that thing out. It's going to burn a hole wherever it sits. So if it's in your garage and there's something happens with the battery and it catches on fire, it's going to catch everything on fire. It's going to be insane. And so I would really rethink this whole they're super reliable, etc. The electromechanical systems that are in those vehicles, they're very complex. It's a lot of, every time you charge it up, literal chemistry is happening. You have fans on there, you have fins, you have tons of circuit boards. It's not simple. And so to think that, it's just easy on maintenance, it's going to save me on maintenance, it's a very false statement. Let's finish this out here, because what I'm talking about here applies to the majority of American drivers. EVs just don't really work out. Again, there are a few exceptions, and I think EVs are great. They're a great technology. I think they are the future. At some point, battery technology is going to get so good that everyone's going to be using EVs, and that will be when you can recharge your batteries. 5 minutes of recharging your batteries can give you 200 to 300 miles of range. Once that happens, once battery technology gets to that point, that's when you know EVs have arrived. Until then, I don't think buying an EV is a good idea. Again, if it fits your specific use case, maybe. Otherwise, I can't recommend it. And instead, I would really just buy a Honda Civic, a hybrid, the new one. If you want good gas mileage, something that's efficient with lots of space, that's fun to drive, sporty, and looks great, with good build quality, great ergonomics, I would really recommend you look into the new Civic Hybrid. They're amazing cars. They're inexpensive. You can get them for like 30 grand, and 30 grand, 40 miles to the gallon. It's faster than a Civic Si, the sportier version. And I recommend that thing to everybody. The hatchback especially has that hatch in the back. You can fit whatever you want. It's very useful, very practical. And so, I'll cut it out there. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Drive Talks. Again, I'm always looking for feedback, so let me know in the comments what you guys think. Am I stupid for even saying these things about the EV vehicles? I'd love to hear your comments and argue with you in the comments down there. I love doing that for sure. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you next time. Peace.